to this computer. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of this project. We are working on building the temples, right? This is what our game plan is. We're building out our process. How are we going to make an empire out of the belief system that we have, or at least out of the viewpoints that we see, right? And so yesterday I went in the right of the day or right in the afternoon conversation about the different levels that I've observed in people's practices, right? So you've got the initiatory path, right? You've got the people that are aware that these principles exist. They don't actively serve deity, or they do so in a passive way. Like my friend who was a devotee of Aphrodite, right? He wasn't initiated into the mysteries of her by any means, but he would pray to her 3 times a day. He would get benefit from that. Then we have like the level 1, like the priests of, you know, they've assumed the role of leader, like a pastor, a rabbi, a magician priest, right? Someone who is doing the thing for the spiritual pantheons, right? And then you've got your level 2, which is they serve one particular pantheon only, right? And then you've got your level 3 is they are the literal embodiment of that pantheon for the thing that they serve. When you're doing these things for yourself, what's the level you feel you're at? What level are you trying to get people aware of that you are trying to express in your community group? Like, are you building it for the people that are outside just devotees so that they have a place where they can worship, or are you looking to actually create that pathway up into the embodiment station?
Is there, how about a mixture of all?
That works. I mean, that's the thing that in order to build like a temple like that matches and rivals the stuff of the old days, right? That's exactly the kind of thing that they had, was the ability for the individual to assume holy orders and to be aware of how to become an embodiment for these forces. Right? And so the thing is that we have to figure out how to do, and we have to be able to do for ourselves, is we have to build our temples in the same kind of way. So there has to be a public setting where people can come and they can engage, where they can see the action of the devoted, right?
I think you go ask her.
But they don't have to participate if they don't want to, right? And that's the thing. That's like the Facebook community group. And then you have like your level 1 priests. Those are the folks that buy the books. Those are the folks that engage in the classes like you guys are doing, right? And then you have your level 2 folks, which are the people that embody the principles and start to teach, right? Or that start to sell their wares and sell their services in order to be able to provide for their community. And then the level, you know, you get into the level 3 stuff. That's your teaching, you're selling, you're providing community. You've got all 3 things built in, and you've got a public door by which people can come through and say like, hey, look, this is the crazy shit that's going on, right? And so by being able to test this, to be able to demonstrate this, to be able to serve and go into the communities, so, for example, like the Brotherhood, right? We go in there and we serve with the information that we have using the traditions that we're building, right? And so as you're building these out, what station do you find yourself in most commonly? Where do you find most comfort? And are you okay with expressing depth on that? Who wants to go first? Alex, Mike, like,
who's got the grinding sound, or is that just me?
Grayson.
Might be me. All right.
I know I have a screaming baby over here who likes to.
No, it's yeah. No, it's not a screaming child. It's like a dense.
Oh, that was probably my girlfriend leaving the trailer.
Oh. I got keen sound like that. Don't mind me.
So the question was what again? I'm sorry, I lost focus.
The question is, where are you right now in the building of your temple, in the building of your community? Like, do you have where the people that want to come and see what you're up to have the opportunity to come and see what you're up to? Do you have resources available for those that want to go deeper? Do you have products, services, things like that that you're selling back to them so that way you can serve them with your stuff? Third, are you teaching it?
Well, I would say that I'm like in between. I'm gathering the resources and trying to teach what I can, with what I have. Go. Please. No. You don't get a snack on every break, baby.
Kids,
That's
they're
fine.
wonderful.
You're so
Kids
cute.
are my
man.
life.
They're wonderful.
That's why I had so many of them.
All right, so,
That's why I had so many of them.
right. I have 4 of them. I know. They're growing up now. They're not kids. I
I'm
mean, they're still
working
my
on my
kid.
7th.
Wow. You
2
go,
steps
brother.
and 5 of my own.
Make that line strong. That's right.
Good for you, man.
You know
You're
what
gonna have a lot of grandbabies.
I hope so.
Teach them young about herbalism and witchery, and send them off, man. And
Actually,
generation
the
upon
one who just came up and
generation.
asked me for a snack, she actually wants to learn magic. She
Good.
came to me personally, was like, Daddy, I want to learn magic. Like you and Mom.
awesome.
That's amazing.
I mean, she's like 7, so I'm not gonna teach her till she's a little bit older, but I'm gonna at least show her the
High school time.
Yeah.
Not high
get
school
her
age.
used to it.
I mean, this is why I like the gray school so much, is because they specialize in dealing with kids that are 13. That's when they start their practices. And like there's some, I believe that there's some younger than that practices that they do or that they have that sponsorship through them. But yeah, get them into the life early, man. Get them into the life early.
Exactly. I mean, she's having troubles here and there with like behavioral issues, and that's why I want to teach her at least the spiritual aspects. That way she can put those into her life and try to build not as so destructive as she has been.
Are you doing meditation with her? Like get her to sit down and meditate?
I've thought about it. I haven't found one that will hold her focus.
So don't do a guided meditation. Try to do like a 0-point meditation where it's like you all of the crazy thoughts that go through your head when you try to sit still, you hold those and you work them back to calm. You allow them to take the place of, it's like it's like smoking a bunch of weed, but you can't tell this to a kid. But when you've got all of the wandering thoughts, you need to work yourself back to calm so you don't have a panic attack. So in order to be able to work your thoughts back to calm, you can find that 0 point, that center point of who they are, and you can quiet the mind. And so if you get them to sit and they start talking or things like that, it's like, now go from where you're feeling like you want to talk, work it back to calm, work it back to quiet, and then try to stretch that quiet space from 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes into 10 minutes, into 20 minutes, into an hour.
Right, like teaching them to calm the body, to calm the mind.
Exactly. And I'm not saying do guided meditations. I'm not saying give any external stimuli, like put on some light music, just sit down and just, if you've got a thought in your head that feels like you want to compel it to speak or to speak out or to act on it, hold that inside as best you can, calm your nervous system, calm your mind, calm your emotions, and work it back to being quiet. Like you don't have to express every thought in your head. You can be still. You can find that stillness, and that's something that you can start off really, really early, and that'll actually give a lot more focus and help. So that way in those situations that it's out in the world, like in the wild, right? And you need to calm external stimuli, that's a really great way to do it. It's like you just work it back to, okay, this is the thing that's setting me off. How do I get that back into a calm? So it's like, I can do this.
Right. It's kind of like how I used pain as my stimulus to calm down back when I was younger and going through the court system. Whenever the judge would say anything that would make me want to jump over the bench and strangle her, I would just press my nails into my thumb and focus on that pain so I don't hurt anybody.
Unfortunately, yeah, that's a really good example of how that works. But ideally, you want to find something that isn't so destructive or isn't
Like
so
a rubber
Right.
band when you're trying to quit smoking or something.
yeah, like the rubber band method works. Like you snap the rubber band on your wrist, but you know that becomes problematic also.
It
You
does.
know,
It leads to other things and so on.
yeah, and it's like when I was learning witchcraft, my friend who taught me the basics, like from like the grounding points and the elemental connections to the earth and things like that. She also was a cutter, so she would bleed and things like that onto the earth and into the elements and things like that. And that's where I learned how to do that kind of blood magic association. And it's like, all right, well, that's a little too intense for me. So, but she eventually found her calm and stopped doing that, you know. And so finding your calm and preventing that kind of negative association, it allows for the endorphin rush of the energy to flow up into the body, but it allows for you not having to worry about self-harm. You don't have to worry about harming others. You don't get as disruptive into the school systems and things like that, because there is an unfortunate side effect with kids, especially that are spiritual ones, that are extremely open to psychic development or that are extremely aware of the bullshit that's going on around them by means of high energy, by means of disruptive personalities and things like that. So being able to feel those things, but understanding that you have the control over those things, you know, that can start early. And that by the time she's 13, give her 4 years from now, 5 years from now, you know, working through the techniques of her body, getting in control of herself. So that way, when she's not in control of herself or when she's not in control of the environment, she can control her relationship to that environment, which gives her more power.
And that's where I wish I had somebody when I was younger, because you know my mom didn't believe me. I told her I kept hearing people. She just shoved it off to the side as if I was just being a kid.
Right. Like that's an unfortunate side effect because there isn't a public understanding of what it's like to be a psychic kid. There really isn't, because we're treated as weird. We're treated as evil. It's treated as something that's too scary because the people that are in power either got scared themselves and so are railing against it because it's bad, because they never got control of it. So therefore they never had the discipline. They never learned the self-control. And so therefore they did bad technique, right? And so therefore those that are in the know, right, they take the time to cultivate that discipline. They take the time to go through and be like, this is the thing I need to do. This is the outer court stuff, right? Like this is you've provided a space for meditation. You've provided a space for being calm. You've provided a space where people can come and explore their non-attached energies, right? And so again, this is what goes back into building a tradition, right? You're building an outer court so that way the techniques that you teach her, you can teach to other people. Right. So the better you get at helping her and explaining to her in her age group how to handle these kinds of complex thoughts, because you know how to talk to her. I mean, she's your kid, for God's sake. So getting her to calm her body, getting her to calm her mind, and just to sit and be still and to get control of herself, right, will shut down those psychic experiences, because she'll understand this is where I start and stop. This is where those energies are coming in. This is that difference that I can feel. So I can put up the wall and be like, no, that shit will not affect me. That gives her power.
Right. And I didn't learn that till I was like 8th grade, when the constant headaches would come, and I eventually and I would envision a brick wall and the headaches would stop. It was as if I was being psychically attacked, or at least that's what it felt like. And that's how I dealt with that. You know? But I didn't learn that in the 8th grade.
And you put a bunch of little witch kids in a room together, or a bunch of kids today that are all, you know, psychically in tune. And yeah, they are actually like fucking with each other psychically. Like that shit happens. It's not fun. It's a fact of life. But being able to work her back to a sense of calm, being able to have that discussion where, all right, this is a technique that, yes, it can lead to magic, but it's not a requirement of it.
Right.
Like, even if she walks a different path in her life, at least she knows from the earliest outset, meditation is the thing that will get her calm and in control.
About something since mommy ain't here right now.
I will be right back. My daughter's teacher needs to talk to me.
Okay.
Okay.
See you
What
in
you
a minute.
burning?
What's that, Mike?
What you burning?
I am burning the spell of the day today.
I thought so.
Yeah, and the spell of the day from yesterday, because these two together, holy damn, like this stuff is fantastic. So it was saffron, periwinkle, and frankincense today.
Right.
With the yarrow, the rose, and the frankincense from yesterday. Oh,
Gotcha.
smells like a temple in here. It's like, oh, so much fun. So much fun. You know, and it's getting into this thing where being able to have techniques like the meditation stuff as an outer court kind of discussion is like, okay, well, if you want to come sit and meditate and be calm and you want to do it in an environment where it's magically infused with incense, great, you can do that. And it's not calling on any particular force. It's just giving you the ability to feel your own energy and to get control over it, right? At least that's what I would consider to be like the outer, like you don't require a priesthood. You're not required of, like, in my system, it's the rite of transformation. Like you don't have to do any of that shit. Like level 1 stuff, you can conjure the gates all you want. Level, you know, it's, you already know the magic exists. You're already starting to work with the materials that I'm teaching in the structure for your own stuff. That's your like outside stuff. Your level 1 stuff is this is the stuff that you're using and you want to go deeper with it, right? Level 2 is let's do the rite of transformation and we're just going to go balls deep into whatever it is. So that way, through the personal initiations that occur via personal gnosis, via lineage transmission and things like that, to get you to level 3. Like the rite of transformation facilitates for the level 2 shit in my system. And when you're teaching hermeneutics, when you're teaching your synchronism and the hermetic laws and the frequencies, stuff like that you're doing, do you have a system like that you're building?
Yeah, I got it on YouTube, the Divine Sorcerer. I've actually got videos going through the first 5, I think it is, the first 5 principles of hermetics, what they are, like a detailed explanation, and you can look through. I think it was like it's been like a week or 2 between each video, and you can actually look. It correlates with the astrology and the biochemistry that I've been putting out as well. So
right now, that's like your level 1 stuff, or that's like your that's like your intro to everything, right? Now the next question I have is, are you going to work on stuff that's going to be that next level development for it? It's like, okay, now you know these things. Now I'm applying these things. This is an exact example of how I've applied principle 1 from lesson 1 into this technique.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can take the principles of natural law, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, like, because of what I do, being a ghost hunter and working with necromancy and cartomancy and stuff, you can take those 3 principles, you probably take them all, and you can correlate that into your magical practice and show people, you know, exactly straight down to the T, what the vibration is doing and how it's working, the rhythm, how it's, in synchronicity working with the polarity and the techniques of natural law. I mean,
excellent.
All that's very important when, even in witchcraft, when you're doing your spells and stuff. Like if you don't have a sense of hermeneutics, polarity, rhythm, frequencies special. You're working with otherworldly things, with an energy. It's a frequency. It's a vibration. It's what we ultimately are when we lose this flesh suit. We're a force, an energy. What is an energy? It's a vibration. It's a frequency. It's a, you know,
Exactly.
a record.
Now, so then you've got, I mean, and I know you need to work on building out your courses and what they would contain for that next level of your development, because you've already got the information that's available. Now you have to get people working with that information. Now you've got to figure out a way, okay, well, this is the thing that you're doing. These are the principles that we're going to work with. We're going to spend an entire week on just one principle. So that way it drills it into their head, right? And the second week, it'll be the second principle to drill that into their head. And then there will be a compound of the interrelationship between everything in order to drill that into their head, right? So that way, by the time they're done, they're no longer at level 1. Now they're at level 2. Now they can apply that, and now they can start working with that and implementing that every single time. So that way there is no gap in their practice, right? So that would be the same thing that I would say is the culmination of creating a priesthood. So you've already got, like, starting off at the cursory, like, it doesn't require anything of you. Sit down and meditate and do that. And then you've got the lessons that you can teach. And then there is the, okay, there's the lessons that you've taught. There's the lessons that you've done. Now, what are you going to go into?
Practice.
Exactly. And then as those practices grow, what is the implementation of that? What are the resources that you develop? What are the books you write as a result of that? What are the books that are talking about the method and the interaction between your studies and your students' studies, right? That becomes what gets you from level 2 into the level 3, where you can then go back and teach on each of the different points. And you have the confidence to do so, right? And so when you're studying the path that you're creating, what is, at least at this point, your goal for your students? Do you want them to become a rabbi? Do you want them to become a priest? Do you want to be able to have your own priesthood where you initiate them into becoming a priest of your tradition?
I would ultimately just like to get everybody to understand that the otherworldly forces that move chairs and things in front of us that, you know, appear in front, they're not out to hurt you. Yes, some may. What did you do? Play with a Ouija board and not shut the portal correctly? Or, you know, did you call something forth and piss it off because you didn't have the right off? Like, it all depends, you know. Most of the time, they're just as inquisitive as you. They've been forgotten for centuries.
And they just want to be heard.
Imagine how that feels. To them, they're just moving the chair to get your attention. To you, you're like, and you're out. You know what I mean? How that would be like me saying, "Hey, Brian," and then you turning around and running. No.
Yeah, I say, "Hey, what's up?" And
So
after you say, "Hey, Brian," I'm like, "What?" And then you freak out and you run away.
Right. So ultimately, you know, through using witchcraft with the paranormal and teaching people about the natural law and hermeneutics, is just basically get the generations, even to understand what our ancestors knew back then, that you can call upon supernatural forces, whether it be a demon or a goddess or, you know, just a regular spirit. You can call upon these things and you can actually bring them to, and whether it's just to talk to them or get them to do something for you, you know, now you got to know the guidelines of what you're calling forth and what your intent for it is. Like, you don't want to call a goddess and be like, I just wanted to see it. But no, that's not right. You know what I mean? There's laws and things that you do the right way. But if I can incorporate that all into the paranormal investigating and get it put on video evidence for people to see and recreate when they go on their own investigations, that's my intention.
Right. Now, that's my question for you then. So your only focus is on the outer court stuff. You don't want to bring people into training them in the witchcraft and the sorcery specifically.
Not right away.
Right.
That would be like an advanced course, because necromancy and clairvoyance, and that's something that takes a lot of time. And usually a lot of people don't want to put that much time into what they deem as not scientific or superficial bullshit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if you can get them through the first course and get them to understand hermeneutics and the other side, and get them to converse within that first course, then taking them in deeper to necromancy, clairvoyant, that would be easier than just, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and that's the thing is like I've done courses on how to do necromancy. I've done courses on spirit summoning. I've done, and it's like that doesn't get the same kind of traction that teaching a business owner how to create a through line of conversation that extends
Right.
to community building. Like I can sell community building all day long, right? It's just I've been focusing very specifically on the spiritual community because I know how important it is to have that same kind of through line existing in our community. So you've got these traditions that you want to build, whether it's what you're building, Alex, for the temple space in Tennessee you're talking about, or with Mike, your paranormal community, right? You've got your outer court as your public group that people are watching you on, your Facebook channels, your YouTube channels. It's like that's the outer stuff, right? That's what the world can see.
Yeah.
Next is going to be like what's in the brotherhood. That's the level 1 stuff. It's like this is where you're giving away material for free. This is where you're giving away stuff that's good content, that's actually teaching them something, and then there's the level 2 stuff is like, okay, well, now it's time for like to go deeper. You want to learn a specific technique this specific way, and you want to take hours and hours and hours to do it, right? There's your level 2. There's your classes. There's where you're going to make some money, right? But it's not about making money to make money for greed and profit. It's about money for infrastructure. It's about, all right, well, you're going to need time. You're going to need to be able to pay your rent so you can still answer these people's questions. So that way you can serve more people that are coming to you for those sorts of things. So that's what you have to figure out is like, okay, well, now that you've got the idea and the premise, what is going to be your level 2 to level 3 stuff? What's going to be that gap in between that you can fill with your material? Is it going to be courses? Is it going to be books? Is it going to be talks at paranormal conventions that you get paid for, right? And then are you going to be able to go and publish on or go on to like the Discovery Channel and get a channel going for
Like
Not
how
discovery.
like how Cunningham and Buckland did on that one talk show.
Mhm.
Basically, like level 1 is just getting familiar, like I said, with the hermeneutics, with the spirits and how you're going to feel, how you're going to intake that energy and output that energy. You know what I mean? Getting comfortable with things, working with that part. And then level 2, of course, is where you're going to take what you learned from level 1 and be able to incorporate it into simple magic, simple witchcraft. Like, okay, so I'm going on these hunts. Well, now I have an idea of what I'm encountering. So now I can look and be taught how to make my own spell for a protection amulet that I can take on my next investigation. You see how you work them straight? You can just work them into it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Now that they got the basic understanding, we can get them into doing protection. Start off with something simple that they do with an amulet or something that they can wear around their neck when they go in. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
that way, they get the sense and the feeling of while they're trying to calm their nerves, they're also protected. And I think that would help them throughout course 2, because as they go deeper, they're going to encounter a lot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, see how at least when I initiated my girlfriend, how I had her do it was through the meditations I first learned before I even started learning about Wicca or anything. Through a pagan friend at school, he had me do these certain meditations and this certain things. So I incorporate what I had to do and ask the same for the year and the day from my students. So that's the finding your familiar through meditation. That's opening your third eye chakra, writing your own version of a circle casting.
All that would be done in part 1, learning hermeneutics. They would, because you can't really. I wouldn't send somebody into doing witchcraft without knowing their chakra was open, because they're struggling hard. I mean, so
Exactly.
you almost have to make sure that their money is flowing, their mind is working correctly, and they are, they're
Speaking of my first student, baby, come here.
What?
Hello.
This is my girlfriend and my first student and the only person I ever initiated.
Congratulations in your initiation and the lifestyle.
Thank you.
You've been enjoying it so far?
I do. It's definitely something I've always been into, just hard when I grew up in the family I did. Great.
Yeah, that does become difficult, especially if you don't have familial support. But the fact that you guys are building a tradition together, and it's like, that's why I want to help as much as possible to be able to like give framework and technique and tools that you guys can use and implement right away. So that way you guys
read more books.
The books do take a time. That takes up the majority of time is the reading.
And
would
this should be
glorify
your
my
She
favorite.
favorite.
just gets like really
This-
tired, and while like the moment she starts reading, and she passes out.
This should be your favorite book.
I plan on getting that, so I have not yet, but it's on the. It's, once I have the actual, once I actually have the monetary ability to do so, I plan on getting the Kindle version.
Nice.
Okay. Nice.
The Kindle
I
version
like
is
my.
screwy though. So be aware
I
that
like
the
my
Kindle version
physical.
didn't go well.
Yeah.
It was before there was a digital conversion program. And since the
Okay.
book itself was written in Open Office, not in Microsoft Word, it didn't translate at all into, because all I had at the time was the PDF, because that computer actually caught fire as soon as I finished it. It was bad. So the original manuscript and all that stuff for the Grimoire of Arts is only in existence in Amazon. That's the only place it actually exists.
See what happens when you overload the computer with too much witchcraft. Witchify, man.
You know, the computer caught fire.
So-
It was smoking. It was bad. It was just, it just stopped working. It gave up the ghost,
You
so
were-
to speak.
You were so deep into the necromancy, and you were reaching that point, man. It was like you're getting close to hell. It's starting to catch fire, man.
So just be aware. I apologize in advance for you buying the Kindle version. It's crap, and I know it, and I can't fix it, unfortunately. So it's
Maybe
not.
we could fix
It's
it with
not.
the 10th anniversary.
What was that?
Maybe you could fix it with the 10th anniversary.
Well, that's the thing is, if I do,
definitely.
I'm doing this 10th anniversary one, and the goal is that you don't need to necessarily have the exact mechanics and the mechanisms inside the Grimoire of Arts itself, right? Like that's the level 2 stuff. Like that book took 10 years to write. All the methods, all the mechanisms of this is the stuff that I was talking about in private chats or in chat rooms for about a decade. Right from about 2002 2003, after I started my senior project in high school, was to write a publishable book for the Grimoire of Arts for people that were in high school starting on the path. And then it evolved into, well, this is the path that I've been working on for the last 10 years. Why not just put it all into one place, so that way if I have to move, I lose my spell books, I lose all my notes, it's all in one place. So that's how that book came to be, is because I was homeless a couple of times. And so I lost more spell books, more notes, more crazy ritual magic than I would ever like to admit to. Like the shit I have lost makes me sad. But the stuff I've been able to build as a result, it's like, okay, well, this is the idea and the train of thought that I was on. So let's carry this train of thought to its next progression. What is the next example of what it could be? Right. So instead of losing my notes continually, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to publish this thing. And then I have a book of notes that I understand. Right. So that's what the Grimoire of Arts is. It's the book of notes that I had, that I was understanding or working with at the time. And so teaching it to other people has been an extension of the conversations that we have in like the YouTube or the Facebook or the back when AOL was a thing, the AOL chat rooms, or the Yahoo Instant Messenger chat rooms, or like Vampire Rave and shit like that from, again, back in the day. You know, it's you know, Pagan Space was an awesome spot for about 5 years, and then it died.
Never heard of it.
Exactly.
Make me feel so young.
Before I came into Facebook, like my mentors had, I met them in Pagan Space, actually. So MySpace was dead. Facebook was around, but I refused to buy it, like have a profile or anything. I wanted nothing to do with it. And there was Pagan Space, right? And then it was in Pagan Space, they had a chat room feature where we were able to interact, and we would hang out at specific times of the day. There would be a group of us that everybody would, at the end of the night, would come, drink, have fun, you know, chat about witchcraft and magic, or chat about different types of techniques, you know. And from that, it evolved into, well, my mentor wanted to have a collection of references that for our order that wouldn't be lost. And so we had a Tricky Witchy was a Ning group that was hosted by a friend. So we had all of our stuff as a subgroup inside of that, which was all password protected and locked down. And then we moved over to Facebook, and that's how I got onto Facebook with that account, because this was only for pagan stuff. Like I didn't actually intend to try to write books with it. I didn't try to build a community with it. I didn't try to influence, business owners and things like that using these methodologies. That's all grown out of the conversations that I've had and people asking me for shit. It's like enough people ask me to teach them shit. It's like, okay, well, how do I teach a group of you how to do this all at once? Right. And so therefore it's a progression. It's that you have to build your level of engagement with your different audiences, with your different communities. And so when you're writing your spell books and stuff, like what's the material that you can put out into the community that you can publish for free? What's the publishing material that you're giving for free that starts a dialogue that then lets them get you into paid services or into deeper initiations that they get to experience for the rest of their life? Like the rite of transformation for me is the thing that I can give the community as like, you want the most amount of power and the least amount of effort.
Right. And see, that's where I'm stuck. The second degree initiation is still yet to be written for my tradition because I have no clue where to start. Yeah, I've looked up the Wiccan ones and it doesn't feel right.
Right. But see, again, it's in like the Wiccan traditions and things like that. That's when you start looking to serve a specific patron. That's when you start looking into, you are now assuming offices and leadership of this coven, this group, this thing, right? You are the mouthpiece of the high priest, right? In certain traditions, there's only one high priest for the entire state or for the entire order. And so they go around visiting the different covens and things like that their members are a part of, right?
And that's what she's going to be. I'm trying to train her to be my high priestess, at least for within the family and to our kinfolk who we feel, if you want to join, if you want to learn, if you are close enough to our family that we trust you with this knowledge, then by all means, we'll teach you.
Right. And so you have to map out what that looks like. So in doing so, you have to go through and you have to figure out, okay, well, these are the leadership skills that we have to have. These are the business skills that we have to have. These are the things we have to do to serve the community so that the community can trust our methods, right? So you have to be able to have like where we're going to throw a big community barbecue so that those low income folks can come and have like a crawfish boil, or can have a chili cook off, or can have, and so once a month they can come and get some food.
Right. I've been thinking about a chili cook off because I do like making chili.
See? And that's the thing is like, you can do it big, you can do it small, but you invite your friends over, you invite your fellow pagans over, you get yourself into the community, and
right.
At least here in California during the pandemic, it's been difficult, not only because of the fact that if you start serving food to the public, you have to have a health inspector. And all the prep work has to be in a registered kitchen and all that shit. So you have to raise funds and stuff like that.
Not if you do it at your house and tell people, look, party at my house.
Exactly. So there's a way to do it that, it's a private invite only event. It's a private, like, this is where you're cutting your teeth. This is where you're beginning to serve, right? So how you build that out is really dependent on what it is your goals are in the long term, because to be the high priest, to be the high priestess is to be the embodiment of the god or the goddess that you serve. There is no difference between that energy force and your energy force. You are the living embodiment of it. Think about it like the Pope, right?
The sea of the holy, or whatever you want to call it. The sea of creation.
Exactly. And so you have to figure out a way to go from where you're at, like just learning the stuff on a basic level to where you can't read the books, you can't actually do the practices and things like that, to what's going to be the mechanism by which you can pay for the book, pay for the time to spend, right? So you basically have to have a job that pays you enough so that way when you're on your own, you can spend the time in your leisure activities to learn this stuff better, right? It's what you go from being a W-2 employee in like the level 1 stuff to being a business owner in the level 2 stuff. It's like,
right. Being a business owner myself, it's all sorts of difficult. I'm still trying to get all the proper paperwork together and everything else.
Yeah. Like I had 7 employees that I taught my business, right? And I was able to have them run my shop when I wasn't physically able to go there. right? And so we still managed to make it sell for quite a lot of money. And so teaching people what you do and teaching people how you do, having a business that's secondary, but follows the same mission parameters of your goals for your order. So that way there is a through line of unity. So it's in the same way that Masonic temples like to elevate Masonic businesses or business owners, they like to shop with other Masons. If you have a community center or a business like a bookstore, in my case, it was an adult store, right? And then I was able to interact with the community, and I had a mechanism by which to go to the bars and provide sex toys, provide lubes, provide toy, demonstrations and stuff like that for free, for fun. That got me social interaction, but it also built up the reputation in the community, right?
I just gotta say, Ryan, you are definitely an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Sadly, I'm one of those guys who'd probably take one of those sex toys and use it as a freaking sword.
I mean, you got to sometimes, you got to. But yeah, like when I was living in Knoxville and I was homeless because I paid 5 months of rent in advance, right? One of my roommates, there were 5 of us living in this one apartment, and he put me out because he was fucking his girlfriend and he just wanted he stole all my spell materials. He stole my ingredients. He stole the notes that I had, and then he put me out and he stole a bunch of money. Like it was really fucked up, and I hope he's dead. But I was sleeping outside of this adult store that I was working at. So 12 hours outside the shop at night, right next to a graveyard in Knoxville. So it's like, all right, my necromancer has to like, all right, give me an idea. Give me the path that I need to work on, right? So that's the kind of thing that you develop and you cultivate that relationship with, is like, all right, what is the thing that you're going to have to do? What is your thing? And living down in Georgia, I was working at a Pier 1, and at the Pier 1, this lady came in. She was looking for, she had a basket, and she's like, all right, I need a basket that's got the cloth in there because we need to put our pen holders in it. It's like, oh yeah, what kind of pen holders? It's like fake poop. Like, what? It's like, oh yeah, I own the Jokers in the Comedy Store down there, right across the street. And it's like, oh shit, that's cool. It's about 3 months later, she comes in. I kept a basket in the back room and a rug that she was looking for aside. She's like, all right, now, if you ever want a better job, come see me. So 3 days later, 2.5 years working for her. Taught me all the ingredients, what they were made out of, what they did, how they did it. So when I moved back to Vegas with my mom, so that she wouldn't have to be in Vegas alone, I wound up getting a job at the Deja Vu's and was a extreme fetish buyer for them for about 2.5 years. So it's like I worked my way up. And so it's like, what do we do in our business? What do we do in our employment? What do we do in our lifestyle that allows us to elevate and grow in this same type of level progression? You go from homeless retail employee to retail manager to retail owner, right? It's these distinct progressions. It's like, you've got to figure out in your lifestyle, in your life, from your business to your situation, all of it. Like, you've got to map it the fuck out, right? Because only if you map it out, only then can you actually start saying, all right, well, this I can get control of, this I can get control of. And building a temple is exactly like that, right? Building out a magical tradition that's going to last you for years and years and years is exactly like building a business. It's building a community. It's building the foundations of trust, implementing those value systems, implementing those level systems, right?
It does not need to be every day, all day long.
And so that's the question I got for you then, Mike, is how are you going to be able to do this? Because you can't grow the medical weed because it's not legal, right? Like, you can't do it, and you're not going to do it on a commercial scale. But what are you thinking about doing as far as a practical application of this type of developmental process? Like, what are the key things that you're going through that you think you can actually tap into and use that as part of your narrative, your story of your progression, so that way people that are looking to go deeper with you, outside of hiring you for hunt, hiring you for training, what do you think you can offer the community as a secondary, right?
Never really thought of that. Oh, but I will be growing.
Son.
Growing, because this is going to go on public channels, growing in legal ways.
Legally, yes. Well, you know, as well as most
And
people
that's why
now.
I'm glad I live
I-
in Michigan, because I can grow up to 12 plants and not have to worry.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I will be growing again because right now I'm working on laws for Pennsylvania patients to grow their own. It's already in the Law and Justice. It's the Senate Bill 1024. It just hasn't been, brought down and yay to nay. I've already called the state representative. He's going to yay it. I've already contacted the attorney general who's pro cannabis. So,
Good. Very good.
I'm hoping something positive comes out of this. Like, yeah, they let patients grow.
So it's that's your homework assignment tonight, Mike, is to figure out, all right, you've got this great thing. You've got the material knowledge of how to teach this thing, and you've got the business by which you can run it. What is the thing that's going to connect people to that business and to connect those overlays? How are they going to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next? If you can create that map, you've got yourself a plan.
7 plus 5.
That way, it's a money problem.
They're going to go from simple ghost hunting to actual witchery. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to get deeper from there because after the second part, they're going to be well versed in necromancy that they're going to be raising their own stuff. They ain't going to be like worried about the teaching. I'll be forgotten by the third course.
So that if you're going to be forgotten by the third course, what are you going to be able to do to supplement your stuff? Because you'll have to figure out, all right, well, if you need to get a source of income coming in, right?
That's the thing. When you teach them on the second course, they're going to be telling all their friends about what they're learning. They're going to want to know. Hey, I learned from this guy, And I'll be.
And at that point, you charge for time.
Huh?
And at that point, you'd be able to charge for your time because the demand would be higher than the supply.
Yeah. Like I said, I live in the Northeast, so I live around a lot of witches, a lot of warlocks, a lot of pagan people. Like, I live in witch country, so selling pendants and good luck charms and all kinds of witchery stuff, it'll take off here. It'll definitely take off here.
That's good. That's good.
Right,
And see, there is how you're going to be able to serve your community. You're going to be able to sell those pendants and amulets and talismans. That means you got to start making those amulets, talismans, and stuff like that. What was that you're saying, Alex?
And see, that's where it's difficult up here in Michigan. Every occult shop I've been to has eventually been shut down because either they're giving away their stuff for free, like dummies, or the church shuts them down through protest.
Right.
This is why I say
This is
having
my
holy
first one.
orders is important, because if you understand that the service to the divine is the same kind of thing that Mike and I do when we talk about God and the path of heaven and all that sort of shit, right? That is all stuff that we are doing. That is all direct applications of this is the divine principles. We're reverends. We have the holy orders. So it's not against the church. It's the inclusion of the mysteries of the church back to the people.
The mysteries that they don't want to teach unless you're part of the priesthood.
Right. And since we're part of the priesthood, we can teach it.
Yes, I am part of the priesthood.
So.
And I'm trying to build one.
Right. And so this is why I say it's important when you're building your temple, when you're considering these things, is like, what's part of your priesthood? What are the sacred things that you have adopted? Like, what are the orders that you'll take? What is the recognizable effect, right? Like I stick by my ordination with the ULC, and I stick by my stuff with the Egyptian initiations and shit like that, because it's like, that's the stuff for me that allows me to connect with the people. But if I need to do like clerical training, and if I need to do community service training and stuff like that, in order to be able to get licensed as a social worker and stuff, which I've been thinking about, but I'm just not sure of. It's like, I'm fine with doing that. It's just, that's the direction that I hadn't considered going in yet, you know, because it's like teaching the principles of magic, teaching the principles of business ownership, teaching all of that stuff. That took 15 years to learn, 17 years to implement, right? Like that's a different type of service to the community. So you've got to figure out what's going to be your service to the community. What is it that you're going to be able to incorporate your priesthood and stuff with, your elevations with, so that way you're not a threat to the community. You're not just one of those fly-by-night witch shops that is doing stuff under the table, under the books, off the record, outside of taxes. You've got all your bases covered.
Right.
Right.
And that takes a little bit of extra work, but at the end, you won't be getting shut down by the churches. At least you shouldn't be.
Speaking
Right.
of community, right?
What's that?
I said, speaking of community, right?
Yeah.
So since I can get out there, let's talk about the community and them wanting to burn witches. Like I was past the video with Mr. Locke and
Oh.
how, yeah. Like I was thinking about, Mr. Locke, me and you have a sit down, bro, because there's many things that I could teach you about your Christian doctrine, my fellow.
Right. That's why I was
Years
going to ask both of you if I
ago.
can manage to get him on a Zoom call. Would you guys like to join me in a Zoom call to speak with him?
Absolutely.
Hey, you add me, yes, sir. Add me, because I got credentials. I'm a pastor. I went from pastor to rabbi. Like I went to all the rabbis. Like, let's talk about structure, because your Christian doctrine is built off the Jewish doctrine, and I guarantee you, Mr. Locke don't even know nothing about the Jewish doctrine. He's all stuck in the New Age. No, let's talk about witches, because witches, they stole their doctrine from us witches.
Right.
So let's out who? No, let's out your hypocrisy, Mr. Locke. Your hypocrisy.
Absolutely.
That's what we're going to talk about, Mr. Locke.
And it's one of those things where you've got this individual who's out there teaching hate, teaching fear, and he is not conducive to community building, because all you're doing is building militant relationships with the people, right?
Right.
And so,
And I want my daughter safe down there,
right.
and I don't want her turned against what it is that we do.
And again, this is why the more structure that you have, the more organized you have, and the more detailed that you make it, as well as creating the outer courts with it, what are open to the public and what are closed behind paywalls or behind holy orders and things like that. Like, there is a point in practice where it doesn't matter how much you pay me. I will not do certain rituals for you. I don't care, because it's not meant for you. And so
Right.
this is where divination comes in. This is where having those checks and balances between a community relationship as well as these kinds of things are so important to have. So that way, those people that are causing fear, that are book burning in the modern day Nuremberg bullshit, right? All the racism that is institutionalized across this country needs to fucking end. How do we create a community that's just as interwoven as those Nazi fucks and those Christians who hate everybody? We have to start establishing, well, there needs to be the same kind of thing that they're using in their traditions to build up their finances, to build up their influencers, to build up their businesses, to build up their communities, to build up their safe spaces, so that we can replicate it the same way. And if we don't have those things in place, because everybody is all like, oh no, it should all be free. It's like, is your roofer free? Is your plumber free? Is your mechanic free? Is your lawyer free?
And here's how I see it. You're not paying for, them to do what they're doing. It's an offering. You're offering up something. So it's like in prayer. You don't just pray to a specific deity without offering.
Exactly.
So why are you going to come to me and ask for a ritual or spell without giving me proper offering?
Right.
Like, it could be a couple dollars and I'd be happy with that. Like, people want an oracle reading. I'm like, okay, $2.
Yeah. So like, here's the thing, right? Is when they're doing ritual magic, right? They need to buy their own materials. They need to be able to supply the materials that you're going to put together and put it before the gods that they don't have access to.
sentence.
That's
So
what
you
that's for.
write under this
When it
box.
comes to teaching and instruction, that's a separate ball of wax, because what you're paying for, it's not the results of that individual. It's the results of that individual in compressing time. So that way there is between your point A and your point B, you've just saved yourself 10 years of practice, because these are the things that you can do that will get you functional immediately instead of having to go through all the bullshit otherwise.
Here you go.
So you pay to save time.
Grayson.
And so if you're not paying to save time, and you're trying to get something for free all the time for nothing, right? You're not putting in effort, you're not putting in the work, you're not putting in your own development, then, it's like, well, what are you contributing to the relationship?
Quit
Right.
just guessing.
And it's like,
It has to be in the law of equivalent exchange. There has to be something, because you can't make nothing out of something, or something out of nothing.
exactly.
You tell him, Grayson.
Right, buddy?
Two.
That's right, Grayson. You preach it, honey.
Right? See, kids like that need to be able to grow up in environments where it's safe for them to practice whatever they want.
Exactly. Oh,
People like that Greg Locke pastor need to not be there. They need to not have that platform, because it's just the same shit as the Westboro Baptist Church. We lose one idiot who's going to protest all these things. So, it's like, I absolutely would love to be in a Zoom with that idiot. I call him an idiot because he's doing more harm to his community than I think even he realizes. Yeah, he's got the raws and like, yay with the endorphin rush for hate. But long term, his everything is going to fall the fuck apart like the Westboros are. When that voice of wrath, hate, visceral, like turning against your community, turning your brothers against your brothers, right? Which is what he's doing. It's like, your congregation as a pastor is the thing you're supposed to protect the most. And if he's threatening to out his congregation, he is failing as an emissary of the divine.
I literally just gave you the fucking answer.
I mean, at that book burning, they burnt Harry Potter, Twilight, anything Masonic.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Twilight did need to get burned. It's a bad book. Like, Sparkling Vampires, no.
Well, I agree with the Twilight. I mean, that can be
but not actually burning it. Yeah.
Sorry, fat guy. I had to make food.
Oh, welcome back, man. But, yeah, dude, like, this is one of those things where it's like there needs to be a community overlay that allows us to interact with ourselves, interact with our friends, our fellows, in the same kind of way where Masons buy shit from Masons, Christians buy shit from Christians. Pagans should be buying stuff from pagans. They should be doing business with pagans. Instead, they're saying, oh no, I can do it all myself. It's like, no, you really can't. Not everything.
There's some things that you just don't know and that other people have and they sell.
Right. It's like, there's shit that only my buddy Keith can make, because he's the only one that I know of that got the licensia to be able to produce that shit.
Right.
Like, I can't do it. I don't have relationships with those spirits like he does. I can't just do like fucking put some shit together. I'll ask him. I'll pay him to do it.
Right.
Exactly.
And
like I'm developing a protection coin slowly but surely. I have the base idea for it, but it deals with spirits that I've written down in my coven book that no one else can get to.
Exactly. And if they are going to get to it, they got to go through your training program in order to be able to work with it, so that they know that it's the right spirit that they're working with, and it ain't just some wandering bit of bullshit.
Exactly. I mean, I went out and I went out in spiritual journeys to find these spirits to make sure that they would work with me. So
Exactly.
like,
Exactly, man. And that's exactly it. And it's building up that repertoire. It's building up that repository of information. So that way, by the time you're done with your coven book, you can publish it and be like, this is my coven book.
Exactly.
And then you've got a level 1 thing that you can teach people from to get them functional, to be able to, by the time they get to level 2, they can write their own book and add it to your coven book.
Exactly.
They'll be able to do the psychic journeys. They'll be able to do their own incense blend. They'll be able to say, hey, look, I used this ingredient blend to do this kind of job, right? And it's like, that's what makes it beautiful. That's what makes it so impressive. And that's what makes it so important as we go through our development, especially as we build out our temples, right? Is that we have these things in place that we know that we need to do, and we actually act on them so that we can do it. So that way it's not just a bunch of talk and a bunch of bullshit, but again, like we talked about yesterday, this is stuff that becomes verifiable. This is stuff that takes the knowledge and the gnosis that we have of being able to conjure spirits via specific herbal blend, specific words, rituals, actions, put it into paper, put it into practice, structure that practice so that people can make use of it. -7. And then put it back into the community.
Exactly. And I'm still in the developmental stage of a lot of it. Like I said, I only got the first degree initiation down. And then from there, it's like, I'm gonna teach whatever spirituality that I can that's not written down, because I haven't found the right words yet.
Good. Finding the right words. The thing is like, keep a bunch of records while you're trying to explore to determine what those words might be. You know, it's in those records that over a period of time, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, that you develop that process. Like there's a book by Ed Fitch. It's called A Grimoire of Shadows. That was the first book I ever started with that actually got me hard into practice. The first book I ever bought was a Victorian Grimoire by Trish Telesco, right? That was a fantastic book about Victorian witchcraft, about knot magic, about cloth puppets, and about kitchen witchcraft. Like, that's what got me into the love of herbs. Like, I loved that book, you know? And so it's the Grimoire of Shadows by Ed Fitch, though. It has the yearly rituals in it. It has the conjurations of energy into the food. That was the first time I ever realized that you can put energy into food, consume it for a holy purpose, right? Long before I ever knew about the Taoist magic, about being able to channel different light into the different foods and the rices and stuff like that that they have in their culture that they've had for 4,000 years. It's not Wicca. Ed Fitch is Wicca. Chinese Taoist sorcery that does the same thing has been around way, way fucking longer.
Right, because, you know, Wicca is only like, what, the 30s?
70 years old?
Yeah.
1960s, 1970s?
Actually, according to his records of it started in, like, every video I've seen, it says he started it in the 1930s.
It started in the 1930s. Well, it became known in the 1930s. It started in like 1870.
Oh, Gardner's. You're talking about Gardner stuff, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. The Gardner clan. There's also a really interesting book. It's the Cutting Man's what is it, the book of the Cutting Man, or Cutting Witchcraft, or something like that, where it's not Wicca, but it's traditional British witchcraft from the late 1800s into the early 1900s. It's really cool. I got to get a copy of that. I've seen it popped up, but like reading the Sanders notebooks, like there's stuff in there. It's like, it's great for the time, but their translations weren't as accurate. They didn't have as many different types of materials available, right? So it's a product of its time and place. And so we have to keep that in mind in the anthropological view at the same time of creating these religious traditions, is because while we are creating a living tradition, right, it has to have some basis on these are the mythos structures that we're dealing with. Otherwise, it devolves into a chaos magic thing, right? And this is why I love Peter Carroll's work so much with the Octavo, is because he postulates that all fictitious material, doesn't matter how random and obscure it might be, is actually occurring in the same dimension that we live in. It's just in a different part of the universe, where light moves at a different rate, where magic moves at a different rate, where energy moves at a different rate, slower from the point of center, outwards into the edges of the creation, right? And it's in that understanding that in all the different worlds, where all the different physics, where all the different things, like in different tangential, like dimensional, like it's all interconnected to this universe. It's our ability to think and to register those thoughts and vibrate specific thoughts that we have, the dreams that we get to see, the visions that we get, the memories of dreams that we get to have. It's because we've somehow aligned our body to a different world in a different part of the universe, and we are writing out those fantasy stories. We are living out those fantasies in our dreams that we're writing about on the computer. That's what Peter Carroll talks about. And it talks about the compression of folding over that space to be able to conjure shit from the pandemonium that Andrew Chumley talks about in the Azoasia. Like, he gives a formulation of the holy alphabet for his Gnostic understanding, and he gives the mathematics by which you can conjure out anything from the phantasmagoria. So technically, you can conjure out the energies within Twilight or within fictional materials to make it viable for you under specific conditions. But that shit is not safe to do en masse, because it's like, here's a book of lies. We're telling you it's a book of truth. But at the same time, under certain conditions, that book of lies can become a book of truth, if that makes sense.
Now, what about Christopher Penzak? I think his name is.
With his Temple of Witchcraft books?
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. So, I mean, again, like, his stuff is written for his particular coven market. He's got his volume 1, his volume 2, his volume 3. It's like, you go through that. The what is it? The Sword and the Chalice series by the Osmond Phillips. Like, I'm gonna go grab that series. Is like, there's an earlier version of the Temple of Witchcraft books that another author, husband and wife pairing, did. And it's really great.
How much?
Hey, look, it's Opportunity's door.
Yeah, right.
Where do you?
So there's the Foundations of High Magic, Volume 1 of the Magical Philosophy series by Militia Denning and Osborne Phillips. So that's Volume 1. Volume 2 is The Sword and the Serpent, volume of Magical Philosophy. The function of the Kabbalah to bring together the world we live in with the world that is within each of us, so that the forces of the outer world may be brought under the control of the psyche. Thus and only thus do we fulfill our destiny to become the masters of our fate. This is the great work of high magic and the goal of the spiritual endeavor. Volume 3 is, here are all the parts, resonant rituals, potent individual practices, essential knowledge required for the complete and effective development of a true magical understanding and the dynamic magical power set forth in this book by high initiates of the glorious star of self-training or group study. This is a unique work, is published under the authority of a valid and living internationally established occult order. Right? So it's the same concept, but these came first.
Okay.
So it's like, I try to find source materials wherever possible. For me, these are my source materials, is because these are fantastic. Book 3 gets into Enochian shit. Book 2 is really crazy. But
see, I have a book called Wicca for Couples, and that's the title does not match what it taught. He's more political and likes to bash Buckland a lot.
Buckland was a weird motherfucker, though.
Like, I would have wished I could have met him at least. You know, I want to go see his museum.
Yeah. You know, and Buckland took right down from Gardner. And Cunningham got some flack. Like, so I actually got a chance to meet Trish Telesco. She was at a Pagan Pride Day, and she and I had a booth next to hers, drinking hot toddies in the rain when this shit was going down. And she was talking about the old guard, as it were. So she was talking about Silver Raven Wolf. She was talking about M.R. Sellers. She was talking about Buckland and Cunningham and things like that. And, you know, good authors though they were, because they were all in the same industry. They were all in the same author circuit. They got into the conventions and they were doing, you know, the workshops and things like that. And it's unfortunate what publishing does to authors under certain conditions. Like, they're required to pump out a bunch of content, and then the editors get a hold of it. Like, Cunningham's Book of Herbs, the original one from the 1990s, is different than the one that's published into the 2000s.
because it's been revised.
With
It
it.
has been revised, and it hasn't been revised, in my opinion, for the better. They took out a bunch of necessary ingredients and components that were in the original book.
Kind of like that one book. What's it called? Oh yeah, the Bible.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. The book's written out. The reason why I say the 1970s is when Wicca took a turn is because that's when Llewellyn came around, and that's when Redwood Weiser came around, and they started mass producing pagan New Age texts. But they also started re-editing them. They would go back through and get those public domain works from the 1800s, 1700s, and they would change the meaning to extract out sections. Like there are entire sections of books that are absolutely missing from different volumes.
So that explains why my 20th anniversary complete guide of witchcraft by Buckland is so confusing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of his information that he did have in there that was probably somewhat correct is gone.
Yeah. And so like there's Buckland's practical candle burning rituals. There's two versions of it. One that was published in the 90s and one that was published in the 70s. I don't even know about the reprints and shit now, but back in the 70s version, they have a spell to increase personal power. In the 90s version, that spell is omitted.
They took it out?
Yes.
It's like they don't want us to get more powerful than what they already know.
Right.
That's why it's called occult knowledge, because the word occult means hidden.
Right.
Knowledge.
And I have I've got two versions of the same book in several cases. Like one is called The Mirror of Magic. They later revised to become The History of Magic. So it talks about different things that are omitted in the volume 1, and they're just missing. There's just straight up missing information, entire sections. And it's disgusting.
Hey, your incense stopped, man.
Yes, but the house is full. I'm out. Burned it all. Like all the stuff from the spell of the day this morning is done.
I'm sitting here like, hey, there's no smoke.
So how's that tea though?
Really good. Really good. So it's these flowering teapots, right? So you put it in the water and it's like these really pretty, like this, like the bloom, and then it's got little jasmine flowers and it had a little thistle on top, and it would just like unfold and unfurl, but it comes in this little round ball. Like they're really pretty to look at. And you get a couple of batches off of it. Like this is the second run of full teapot. So it's like, all right, lots of cups from these little baggies. So use it till it's totally done.
I can't wait to go to the Witch's Tea here in Flint. See what they have.
Oh, that'd be neat, man.
I've been drinking this tea blend called elderberry echinacea.
Ooh, that sounds lovely.
Who's it by?
That sounds like it smells good. That smells like it sounds good.
That smells so good.
Right, I could completely smell it through the camera.
Right, like the echinacea. Ooh, that's good stuff. And elderberry. I love elderberry stuff.
Like my girlfriend bought a whole bunch of extracts from like Walmart and wants to make like a whole bunch of different things like perfumes and such out of it. I don't know if that would work, but
I drink this every morning because it's good for you. Elderberry and echinacea are two mixed with honey. When you mix it with honey, it's good for your immune system. So I stopped drinking coffee every morning, and this is what I drink every morning.
That sounds fun.
Like I said, it's an immune booster, man. You know what I mean? Like you can never be too.
I mean, for my girlfriend, like when she gets sick with a sore throat or a cough, it's simply a tablespoon of honey, a little bit of cinnamon sprinkled in, mix it together with like a toothpick, and all right, down the hatch.
Yeah, I was going through that book I have, and the wife brought this home one day. She's like, "It's elderberry echinacea." I was like, "Let me try that." And then she got some kind of blackberry. Yeah, blackberry currant. Tell you what, that's good too. Oh, it's so. Oh yeah. Between them two, yeah.
That sounds lovely.
The blackberry is just like a tasty tea, but this is an immune fighter, man. Anybody
Yeah.
healing naturally, you know what I mean? And you want to like improve, give your immune system a boost every morning, drop the coffee and start drinking this with a little bit of honey, like a quarter size dab of honey. That's all you need.
I just gotta get rid of this habit first.
Definitely what?
That took a year for me to get over, man.
No, you don't need the honey, but again, honey is good as an antibacterial.
Right. I mean, they use honey in golf balls to make them float.
Did they? Huh. How fun.
Right?
Science, man. Science.
I
All
used
right.
to have like a book of 1,000 useless information things. So, like
That's
squirrels
interesting.
can't carry rabies; they're too small.
I love it.
Squirrels can't carry rain; they're too small. Okay.
Rabies, they can't carry rabies.
Oh, rabies. Yeah, I've never seen a rabid squirrel.
Exactly.
So if you're folks, if you're worried about rabies, go buy yourself some squirrels.
Right? I don't know where this is going. All right. So just to finish off, at least for the recording anyway, I'll stop this here and we can continue on having our conversation. But thank you guys so much for joining me today for the conversation for building temples and building the structure for the temple. So that way, hopefully the people that are watching this get the opportunity to start implementing some of their next levels of development so they can structure it out for their people. So I appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you very much. And we are
Anytime, my
going
brother.
to pick this up tomorrow at noon.